On the day Brian Thompson, CEO of UHC, was shot to death, many expected public outrage. But instead, social media is flooded with expressions of joy. How did the CEO of a health insurance company become one of the most hated people in America? Why is his assassination seen by many as an act of justice? And what does it reveal about the American healthcare system? An in-depth look at an affair that is shaking the world of healthcare, insurance, and all U.S. citizens. On Wednesday, December 4th, 2024, at 5:45 in the morning New York time, multiple shots were fired at the entrance to the Hilton Hotel in Manhattan. The target was Brian Thompson, CEO of UHC Insurance. The street camera footage left no room for doubt. An armed man emerged from among the parked cars, shot Thompson, and disappeared. Given that Brian Thompson, who was the CEO of UHC, was considered a key figure in the healthcare industry, the unusual event immediately grabbed the headlines across all media channels. But instead of a sense of mourning, social media was filled with a wave of hatred towards the victim and unqualified support for the unknown assassin. Phrases that were shared included, "Justice has finally been done," "It's time someone did something." Commentators still see the assassin as a hero who dared to do what the law failed to do: punish the man who played with human life for the sake of profit. While insurance companies in the U.S. have been causing public discontent for years, UHC, headed by Brian Thompson, is considered the worst of them all. The company insures nearly 50 million Americans, but it has also led the industry in rejecting legitimate insurance claims. Since Thompson's appointment in 2021, the company has rejected 33% of claims, twice the industry average. Another startling statistic revealed after the assassination showed that the rejections were made by AI software, which decided which patients were eligible for treatment and which were not, sometimes deciding the fate of people with serious medical conditions. In the first day and a half after the assassination, the media covered the murdered man, Brian Thompson, and the incident itself. 2 days later, the networks began surveying the public's reaction across all networks in an attempt to understand the meaning of the sweeping anger that erupted following the incident. And when you look at and examine the data, it turns out that the U.S. healthcare system is rotten to the core, led by the insurance company UHC. The company's unprecedented rate of claim denials has led to the Senate launching an investigation. In addition, the U.S. Department of Justice investigated suspected antitrust violations following a problematic acquisition of another company by the corporation to which UHC belongs. Thompson and his management knew about the investigations, but did not share this with investors. Instead, they sold shares worth tens of millions of dollars in October 2023. When the affair was exposed in February 2024 by the Wall Street Journal, the company's stock plummeted. Investors lost an estimated $25 billion, and another investigation began on suspicion of insider trading and fraud. At this point, no one was sure whether Thompson's killer was a frustrated policyholder or an investor who had lost all his fortune. 5 days after the incident, a suspect in the shooting was arrested in a McDonald's branch in Pennsylvania, Luigi Mangiano, who immediately becomes a modern-day Robin Hood, as the masses call him on social media. Countless messages of support were published for him, and funds were mobilized to finance his legal defense. Others called for his immediate release and even demonstrated. Meanwhile, the company is trying to regain control of the narrative and posted an official mourning notice in front of the company's offices in memory of CEO Brian Thompson, which read, "We have lost a great leader and a man dedicated to doing good." But the public reaction was harsh. Social media was filled with ridicule and mockery of the company, and responses to the ads ranged from, "What good did he do exactly?" to, "It's a shame it didn't happen sooner. Maybe a few people would have been saved." The media continued to focus not only on the assassin and his victim, but mainly on the American Health Department. The story illustrated in a very sharp way the extent to which the U.S. health insurance system does not work for the benefit of public health, but rather to maximize the profits of corporate executives and shareholders. The funds paid by insured individuals are not directed directly to medical care, but are used primarily to increase corporate revenues. For example, Patients diagnosed with serious illnesses like cancer or heart disease are often denied treatment on the grounds that their treatments are not necessary, while company executives rake in millions of dollars in bonuses. One recent case is of a single mother who was denied coverage for her chemotherapy treatments, leading to her condition worsening and ultimately her death. At the same time, corporations continue to increase dividends for investors while raising insurance premiums for ordinary policyholders. In many cases, patients who try to appeal denial decisions encounter insurmountable bureaucratic obstacles, leading them to forego essential care. This is the economic model of the insurance industry, not to sell a regular consumer product like jeans or a television, but to control access to medical care, and to do so for purely economic reasons, even when human lives are at stake. This corruption is amplified by the fact that it is the health and life of the insured, not a luxury product. And this is a sweeping phenomenon not limited to the healthcare industry. In fact, it reflects the way in which giant corporations operate in the US and around the world. In a recent article published in The Guardian, Senator Warren describes how the entire tax system sanctifies shareholders at the expense of the general public. According to her, in the 1980s, only about half of corporate profits were directed to shareholders, while the rest was invested in employees, development, and innovation. In contrast, today, most of the money flows to investors, while employee wages have hardly increased. Another amazing statistic presented in the article is that 93% of stocks in the US are held by the richest 10%, while more than 50% of households do not own any stocks at all. The culture of maximizing shareholder profits is nothing more than an exclusive concern for the rich at the expense of the middle class and the poor. To change the situation, Warren proposed a law that would require large corporations to also consider employees and other stakeholders, not just shareholders. The law includes measures such as having 40% of the board of directors elected by employees, restrictions on the sale of shares by executives, and the requirement that companies' political spending be approved by at least 75% of shareholders. The bill was first introduced in 2018, but to this day, it has encountered strong opposition from the political establishment, and once again we encounter the capital-government nexus. The political establishment's opposition to health insurance reforms is not driven by purely business considerations, but is closely linked to the influence of big money on politics. Health corporations invest huge sums in lobbyists and political campaign financing to preserve the system as it is, and to ensure that insurance policy continues to serve their interests rather than public health. In practice, the establishment at all levels, political, economic, and legal, works first and foremost for the upper class and the wealthy, while the ordinary citizen remains unprotected and without a real voice in the corrupt system. The Thompson scandal and the public outcry over the healthcare system could change the picture. What seemed like a one-off criminal incident has become the catalyst for a broader debate about corporate corruption, the power of insurance companies, and the question of when will the rules of the game finally change for the benefit of the public at large. The big question, will this shockwave lead to real change, or will everything return to normal?